This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
You're listening to the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. And now, here's your host, Lisa Rangel.
Welcome and hello. Welcome to the 50th episode of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast. I'm Lisa Rangel, host of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast and founder of Chameleon Resumes. We are an executive resume writing, LinkedIn profile development, and job search consultancy firm that helps executives and high potential leaders land their next position faster. And on today's podcast, we're going to talk about what to do when you think you're getting laid off and you can handle that like a champ. Each week, there's a financial news story about a company laying off a few hundred or even a few thousand people. And even in a strong hiring market, some companies struggle with profits and they need to make cuts. In 2017, Macy's announced they were closing 68 stores and cutting 10,000 jobs. Recently, Hewlett-Packard announced a layoff of a few thousand. The bottom line is, and there's a myriad of these types of examples, but the bottom line is, even though I'm very positive about the general job landing outlook, these headlines happen. However small or large, no company is immune to the layoff possibility or phenomenon, and no job is immune from the downsizing phenomenon. Your career is always in play. Always. Obviously, the impact of any corporate change is bigger than simply your job. But at the end of the day, all you care about is your job, right? That's all that matters, your career. So here are 8 moves on how to protect your overall career, reduce your headaches, and maneuver through a possible layoff like a champ. So first, as evidenced by the fact that you're here, I'm a big believer in assume you're fired today. Adopting this mindset forces you to be proactive. I'm not looking for the doom and gloom. I'm looking for you being proactive. Make a to-do list of everything that's necessary to begin a search for position outside your company, and even network within. So first one, as you've heard me mention many times before, if it's your first time to the podcast, welcome. The key then is to know the first step is to update your resume. What's most important is learning how much of the search process may have changed since you last looked. So you don't have to pull the trigger on doing a job search today, but being prepared puts you in a position of strength. No matter what goes down, having a plan to follow helps you keep calm in a crisis because you know you'll be okay no matter what. It'll help you make better decisions. It'll help you, even doing your resume and updating it will help you negotiate for yourself better, because you'll know all of your assets and you'll have them at your fingertips from creating your wins and your stories for your document. So if you haven't listened to all the podcast episodes to ensure you have everything ready, go to Pretend You're Fired Today. Start from the beginning. We'll learn how to update your resume and your profile, and this way you'll ensure that you're all set. Second, do your homework. While the corporate situation, the merger and acquisition, the downsize efforts are still being addressed and compiled, while they're still on the drawing board. Completing the deal or making this type of decision takes time. And it's obvious which companies' values, strategies, methodologies, and terminologies will dominate in this process. If it's a merger and acquisition and it's not your company that is in the predominant role, then you have to learn how things get done in that potentially new company. So, access that information and insight from media coverage, reading security analyst reports, obviously if the company's public, industry reports for any private company information that may have been shared, ask contacts to get the down low. If it's the company you're in that is the dominant partner of the merger and acquisition that may lead to the layoff, identify what will be adopted from the partner. What's the point of doing the merger? How can you capitalize on that to show that you're actually an asset in both scenarios that are now going to be merged? So you have to do a little bit of a deep dive. Having this knowledge base equips you to present yourself effectively in this shifting environment as an asset to both sides being merged. The third is just accept that things may not be the way they used to, right? Accept that the past is over. So, the reality is the goodwill you established with superiors, the reputation you built, the promise of future rewards may possibly no longer exist in this new organization or in this new situation if it's simply a straight downsizing. So I'm not saying forget about them. I'm just saying don't complain necessarily if you don't have the leverage to bring them back or keep them on the table. Doing that holding on to yesteryear, that kind of thing, can give off an impression that you're part of the old order or you're part of the problem that they're trying to fix. So the easiest way, although it's not easy to do this, is to mirror the new order and use its style of communication, language, goals, buzzwords, so you look like you're part of how things will look in the future. You want to look like you're part of the future. Fourth, reconfigure what you do with what is now needed. So again, sort of a continuation of the last point, if the new order of the organization is focused on accomplishing its goals as cost efficiently as possible versus growth based, then shift how you do your work to show that you're supportive of that goal. You have a shot at keeping yourself employed if you can explain succinctly how your function aligns with these newly found priorities. So for example, instead of describing exposure, if you're in marketing, right, show how you've contributed to a top or a bottom line, or how you've expanded a new business line, and talk about revenue numbers or profit numbers, even better, right? So sketch out how you will increase sales or profits and talk less about exposure. Unless you can quantify the importance of that exposure for just exposure's sake in marketing really doesn't tell anybody anything. But you have to learn if that is the priority of the new organization. So without warning, you could be called in to justify your existence. It sounds crude, but it's true. So I'd say be proactively ready for that. 5, don't hide. Out of sight, out of mind is not always the best approach. So it's about being out there so you can make your value known to the new organization and the decision makers within that new organization. So reach out beyond your own department. Have your elevator speech ready. Suggest how you can be helpful. If rebuffed, don't run for cover. Instead, identify additional entry points into the power structure of your new organization or the reduced organization, the smaller organization. Who are the new power jockeys, so to speak? So it could be joining people at a company gym at 6 a.m. or sharing special expertise in the market on new markets that they're looking to target in this new organization, newly structured organization. Maintain a self-confident persona. The display of fear, it's never good. So, just do your best to remain confident knowing you have something to offer, even if it takes a little work to get it discovered or rediscovered. 6, monitor signs of being encouraged to quit. If you quit, it reduces severance costs to the company, so they can subtly or directly encourage you to resign. Tactics to achieve this could be lessening your workload, establishing impossible quotas, excluding you from communication loops. If they're really dysfunctional, public humiliation. The decision on whether you stay or go is your decision. It can depend on many factors, but be aware of this. Those factors that can contribute to this range from your financial condition, whether resigning versus being fired, which is in your long-term best interest. There's really no absolute right answer. But remember that a firing is perceived differently from a wide-scale reduction in force. So consult with a lawyer or a career expert if needed to see what might be the best course of action if you're going through a tough time during this process. Now is a good time if this is happening where you're going to be potentially laid off or it's being announced. Review your legal contracts, review your agreements. Your options may be predetermined based on what you signed during the hiring process. For example, from the get-go, you may know that you're not going to fit into the emerging organizational culture, but if you entered an agreement when you got hired to stay on for 18 months because you're in a, maybe a critical position, if you signed on to stay on for 18 months after any merger, you may not have the option to leave even if you want to. So just make sure you look at non-competes and you look at the conditions of your employment that you signed that may have seemed like no big deal at the time, but given the changing in scenarios, you just want to see what you've signed on for. So it's about self-interest and making sure that you take care of yourself. And again, knowing it all ahead of time. And lastly, if you do stay with your organization and you don't go through a layoff, I say don't think the dust is settled. I say don't settle in because you never know when that may happen, right? There's merger and acquisitions, downsizing, if you remain, the integration of the new cultures, the new systems, the reduced force, it can take a while to have that all assimilate and integrate. And during that process, your job could change. So they may determine at a later date your position isn't needed, even if you weren't part of the first round of firing, or first round of layoffs. So I say don't anticipate settling in. Always make sure you're ready. And if you want help navigating this type of scenario, then the key is to hire us for personalized guidance. Look at how to handle this situation with dignity, grace, and foresight. It's about being proactive to get your career in order for today's economy. That, to me, is true executive job security. Go to executivejobsecurity.com, invest in our executive job security program, and you'll work with our team of career performance coaches who can show you how to remain employable and constantly be moving forward in your career despite these hiccups that happen. This way you don't have to do it alone, and you can still maximize your efforts. So go to our career coaching resources found at executivejobsecurity.com. And for the next few episodes of the Pretend You're Fired Today podcast, we're going to continue to go through a list of activities and tactics that you can do now as if you were let go today to ensure that you are always employable and you are always ready for whatever the world brings your way. The first item on the list was the resume. You're going to go to resumecheatsheet.com and you'll be able to look at how we suggest to write and lay out your resume. And we also go in detail in episodes 1 through 8 on how to do that in much greater detail than the cheat sheet. So use the cheat sheet as a guide. And the same with the profile. When you update that, you can look for a deep dive details on how to do that in episodes 9 through 12, but also see how it should look at LinkedIn profile cheatsheet.com. So, and in the last 3 dozen or so episodes, some of the topics we covered are how to work with internal and external recruiters, the ABCs of job security, how to get a better raise, and how to create 9 hours of job search time per week when you are totally swamped and don't know how you're going to do that. So you'll want to revisit those episodes. I'm so proud of you for taking these steps of making yourself marketable when you don't really quite need it. It's huge and it's a gift to yourself. So kudos to you for learning this and doing it before you need it. This will help you stay employable. My friend saved me with her priceless advice, Pretend You're Fired Today, and I'm paying it forward with you. And I ask you to share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from the build the demand for what you do before you need it advice. I feel like it's a public service announcement. I want to make sure everybody's taken care of. So thank you for your help in sharing this. And doing the steps suggested in this episode will help you handle a potential layoff due to a merger and acquisition or just simply a reduction in force. So in the next episode, we're going to dig deep into the possibility that if you're feeling stuck, that it's actually holding you back in your career. So it's a challenge to work through. So we're going to give you some guidance on how to get through that type of situation. So don't miss the next episode. And this way you'll know what to do if you feel like you're stuck right now and you just can't get out of it. So in the interim, if you want coaching for your career to help you get past this one area or another one that you might be struggling with, go to executivejobsecurity.com and hire us to help you with this issue or others you may be experiencing so you can create continuous employability in your career. Thank you so much for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Be well.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.